Imagine you're walking through a gallery filled with portraits. Each one is a snapshot of your life, some capturing moments of joy, others highlighting your successes. But there, in the corner, is a portrait that draws your attention. It's the one that haunts you, the mistake you made, the wrong turn you took, the regret you can't seem to let go of. This single image, so vivid and overpowering, seems to overshadow all the others. It's as if your entire identity has been reduced to this one moment, this one error. But here's the question: is that really who you are? Is your identity truly defined by your mistakes? Or is there a way to step back, to see the gallery of your life as a whole, and recognize that you are more than your worst moments? What if we could shift our focus, not to ignore our mistakes, but to understand them as just one part of a much larger picture? What if self-forgiveness is the key to reclaiming the full portrait of who we are? In a world that often labels us by our errors, it's time to redefine our identity, to embrace the complexity of our human experience. Self-forgiveness isn't about erasing the past. It's about acknowledging it, learning from it, and moving forward with a renewed sense of self. Join us on this journey as we explore how the Stoics' wisdom can help us forgive ourselves, redefine our identity, and rise above our mistakes to live as the whole, imperfect, and evolving beings we truly are. The burden of guilt and shame. Guilt and shame are powerful emotions. They're like shadows that cling to us long after the moment has passed, casting a dark cloud over how we see ourselves. When we make a mistake, these feelings can become so overwhelming that they start to shape our identity. We begin to see ourselves not just as someone who made a mistake, but as the mistake itself. It's as if every action, every decision is now filtered through the lens of that error. Guilt whispers that we've done something wrong, while shame goes deeper, telling us that we are wrong. Together, they create a narrative where we are defined by our flaws and failures. This narrative can be incredibly destructive, trapping us in a cycle of self-blame and regret. We carry the weight of these emotions everywhere we go, and over time, it can feel impossible to escape them. But this burden isn't just emotional, it's also physical and mental. Studies have shown that chronic guilt and shame can lead to anxiety, depression, and even physical health issues like stress and fatigue. The more we let these feelings dominate our lives, the more they start to erode our sense of self-worth and our ability to move forward. Yet despite their intensity, guilt and shame are not meant to be permanent states of being. They are signals telling us that something needs to be addressed, but they are not the final destination. They don't define us unless we allow them to. So, how do we lighten this burden? It begins with the realization that our mistakes, while significant, are not the entirety of who we are. Yes, we've done wrong, and yes, we may feel shame for it, but these emotions don't have to be the last word on our identity. By acknowledging the weight we're carrying and understanding its impact, we open the door to something more powerful, the possibility of self-forgiveness and a redefined sense of self. The power of self-forgiveness. Self-forgiveness is often misunderstood. Many see it as a way of letting themselves off the hook, an easy escape from responsibility. But true self-forgiveness is anything but easy. It requires us to confront our mistakes honestly, to face the pain we've caused ourselves and others, and to make peace with our imperfections. It's a process of healing, not of excusing. At its core, self-forgiveness is about releasing the emotional grip that our past mistakes have on us. When we forgive ourselves, we're not erasing what happened, but we're choosing not to let it define our future. This act of forgiveness is a powerful affirmation that we are more than the sum of our errors. The process of self-forgiveness begins with acknowledgement. We have to be willing to admit to ourselves what we've done wrong, without sugarcoating or minimizing it. This honesty can be painful, but it's necessary. It's the first step in breaking free from the cycle of guilt and shame that traps us in a negative self-identity. Next comes acceptance, not acceptance of the mistake as being okay, but acceptance of the fact that it happened and that it's part of our past. This step involves letting go of the what-ifs and if-onlys that keep us stuck in regret. Acceptance doesn't mean condoning our actions. It means recognizing that we can't change the past, but we can learn from it. Finally, we move to the hardest part, releasing the guilt and shame. This doesn't happen overnight. It's an ongoing practice of reminding ourselves that we are worthy of forgiveness, just as we would extend forgiveness to a friend or loved one. This release is not about forgetting our mistakes, but about loosening the hold they have over us. It's about giving ourselves permission to move forward, to grow, and to redefine who we are. Self-forgiveness is a powerful tool for transformation. It allows us to step out of the shadows of our past and into the light of our potential. When we forgive ourselves, we reclaim our power, our peace, and our identity as complex, evolving human beings. We stop seeing ourselves as prisoners of our past and start seeing ourselves as architects of our future. Understanding identity beyond mistakes. Our identity is often perceived as a reflection of our actions, especially our mistakes. It's easy to fall into the trap of believing that one bad decision or a series of errors defines who we are. But our identity is far more complex, multifaceted, and resilient than any single moment or mistake. To truly understand our identity, we must look beyond the narrow lens of our past missteps. We are not just the sum of what we've done wrong. We are a blend of our experiences, values, strengths, and yes, our mistakes too. These aspects of our lives come together to form a whole, a dynamic identity that evolves over time. Consider this. Every mistake, every failure, every stumble is also an opportunity to learn and grow. Our mistakes don't just highlight our flaws, they also reveal our potential for change and improvement. They're not the end of our story, but rather chapters in an ongoing narrative. When we define ourselves solely by our mistakes, we limit our potential, confining ourselves to a narrow and distorted view of who we are. It's essential to recognize that identity is not static. It's fluid and ever-changing. Who you were 5 years ago, last year, or even yesterday is not necessarily who you are today. Every day brings the possibility of growth and transformation, allowing you to redefine yourself. When we embrace this concept, we begin to see our mistakes not as defining moments, but as parts of a much larger and more complex identity. Moreover, our identity encompasses more than just our actions. It includes our intentions, our hopes, our dreams, and the values that guide us. While our actions are significant, they are just one piece of the puzzle. To see ourselves clearly, we must consider the whole picture, acknowledging both our strengths and our weaknesses. Redefining identity beyond mistakes involves shifting our focus from what we've done to who we are becoming. It's about embracing the idea that we are constantly in the process of growth and that our mistakes are stepping stones on that journey. This shift in perspective is crucial for breaking free from the labels and limitations that past errors may have imposed on us. In the end, understanding our identity beyond mistakes allows us to see ourselves as complete, evolving beings. It empowers us to move forward with a sense of purpose, knowing that our worth is not tied to our past, but to our potential for growth and change. Crafting a new personal narrative. Once we understand that our identity is not defined by our mistakes, we gain the power to rewrite the story we tell ourselves about who we are. Crafting a new personal narrative is about taking control of our own story, shifting the focus from past failures to the growth and wisdom we've gained from those experiences. We all have an internal narrative, a story we tell ourselves about our lives, our actions, and our worth. This narrative shapes how we view ourselves and how we interact with the world. But often, especially after we've made mistakes, this narrative can become skewed, overly focused on the negative, and stuck in a loop of self-criticism. To change this, we need to consciously shift the narrative. Start by acknowledging the mistakes and their impact, but don't let the story end there. Instead, continue the narrative by asking yourself, what have I learned from this? How have I grown? What strengths have emerged from facing this challenge? This approach doesn't erase the past, but integrates it into a broader, more balanced view of who you are. One effective strategy is to practice reframing. For example, instead of thinking, I failed at this, so I'm a failure, reframe it to, I faced a setback, but I've learned valuable lessons that will help me in the future. This shift in perspective allows you to see your experiences not as defining failures, but as important learning opportunities that contribute to your ongoing development. Another powerful tool in crafting a new narrative is self-compassion. When you view yourself with kindness and understanding, you're more likely to see your mistakes as part of the human experience, rather than as evidence of personal inadequacy. Self-compassion helps you move away from a narrative of blame and toward one of acceptance and growth. It's also important to focus on the present and future aspects of your story. Ask yourself, what do I want my life to look like moving forward? What kind of person do I want to become? Use these questions to guide the narrative you're creating, one that emphasizes your goals, values, and the person you are becoming, rather than being anchored to who you were in the past. By consciously crafting a new personal narrative, you reclaim the power to define your own identity. You move from being a passive observer of your life, defined by past mistakes, to an active author of your story, where each chapter reflects growth, resilience, and the potential for a brighter future. This new narrative doesn't deny the existence of your mistakes. Instead, it weaves them into a richer, more nuanced understanding of who you are and who you're becoming. In the end, this process of rewriting your narrative is an act of liberation. It frees you from the limitations of past errors and opens up a world of possibilities for the future, allowing you to live with a renewed sense of purpose and direction. The role of self-compassion in redefining identity. As we begin to craft a new narrative and redefine our identity beyond our mistakes, self-compassion becomes an essential companion on this journey. It's the gentle reminder that we are worthy of kindness, even when we fall short of our own expectations. Without self-compassion, the path to self-forgiveness and identity redefinition can feel harsh, unforgiving, and unattainable. Self-compassion involves treating yourself with the same understanding and care that you would offer to a close friend. When a friend makes a mistake, you likely don't berate them or reduce their worth to that single moment. Instead, you remind them of their strengths, acknowledge their pain, and encourage them to keep going. Self-compassion invites us to extend that same grace to ourselves. At its core, self-compassion has three main components: self-kindness, common humanity, and mindfulness. Self-kindness is about being warm and understanding toward ourselves when we suffer, fail, or feel inadequate, rather than ignoring our pain or being overly critical. It's the practice of speaking to ourselves in a nurturing way, allowing ourselves to be imperfect and acknowledging our struggles without judgment. Common humanity is the recognition that suffering and imperfection are part of the shared human experience. It's understanding that everyone makes mistakes and experiences setbacks. This perspective helps to dissolve the isolation we often feel when we mess up, reminding us that we're not alone in our imperfections. Mindfulness involves being present with our emotions, observing them without getting caught up in them. It's about noticing our thoughts and feelings as they are, without trying to suppress or exaggerate them. By being mindful, we can hold our mistakes in a balanced awareness, neither ignoring them nor becoming consumed by them. When we bring these elements of self-compassion into our lives, we create a supportive environment within ourselves that fosters growth and healing. Self-compassion helps to soften the harsh edges of guilt and shame, allowing us to process our mistakes more constructively. It gives us the emotional space to acknowledge our missteps without being overwhelmed by them, making it easier to move forward. Moreover, self-compassion plays a crucial role in redefining our identity because it helps us to see ourselves as whole and complete, even with our flaws. It shifts the focus from being perfect to being human. When we approach ourselves with self-compassion, we start to view our mistakes not as permanent stains on our character, but as part of the natural process of living and learning. By practicing self-compassion, we build resilience. We become better equipped to handle future challenges because we know that we can treat ourselves kindly no matter what happens. This resilience is key to maintaining a positive and evolving sense of identity, one that isn't easily shaken by mistakes or setbacks. Ultimately, self-compassion allows us to hold our imperfections with care, seeing them as opportunities for growth rather than as defining characteristics. It empowers us to embrace our full humanity, enabling us to redefine our identity in a way that honors both our strengths and our vulnerabilities. This redefined identity, grounded in self-compassion, becomes a solid foundation upon which we can continue to build and grow with a deeper sense of peace and acceptance. Overcoming external judgments. As we work on redefining our identity and practicing self-compassion, there's another challenge that often looms large: external judgments. The opinions and criticisms of others can weigh heavily on us, reinforcing the negative narratives we're trying to escape. Society can be quick to label people by their mistakes, and those labels can feel like permanent brands, difficult to shake off. But here's the truth: no one else's judgment defines who you are. The opinions of others are just that, opinions. They are not the ultimate truth of your identity. Yet, it's natural to internalize these judgments, allowing them to shape how we see ourselves. We start to believe that if others see us a certain way, then it must be true. Overcoming external judgments requires a shift in perspective. It's about realizing that the value of our identity doesn't lie in the hands of others. We have the power to define who we are, regardless of what anyone else thinks. This doesn't mean that we completely disregard others' opinions or feedback. After all, constructive criticism can be valuable. But it does mean that we don't let external judgments control our self-worth. One of the first steps in overcoming external judgments is to develop a strong sense of self-awareness. When you know who you are, what you value, and what you stand for, the opinions of others start to lose their grip. You become more grounded in your own identity, less swayed by the tides of public opinion. This self-awareness is cultivated through reflection, mindfulness, and an honest assessment of your strengths, weaknesses, and values. Another key to overcoming external judgments is to build resilience against criticism. This resilience doesn't mean becoming immune to hurt feelings. It's about learning to process criticism in a healthy way. When faced with external judgments, ask yourself, is this criticism valid or constructive? Does it reflect something I genuinely need to work on? Or is it based on someone else's limited perspective? By evaluating criticism objectively, you can decide whether to accept it, learn from it, or simply let it go. It's also important to recognize that people's judgments often say more about them than they do about you. Everyone has their own biases, insecurities, and limited understanding of your experiences. What someone else thinks of you is filtered through their own worldview, which may not align with your reality. Understanding this can help you detach from harsh judgments and focus on your own growth. Surrounding yourself with supportive people is another powerful strategy. Seek out those who understand you, who see your worth beyond your mistakes, and who encourage you to grow. These positive influences can help buffer against the negativity that might come from others, reinforcing the positive narrative you're working to build. Finally, practice the art of letting go. Let go of the need for external validation. Let go of the fear of being judged, and let go of the labels that others try to impose on you. This isn't easy, but it's liberating. When you stop seeking approval from others, you free yourself to live authentically, guided by your own values and aspirations. Overcoming external judgments is not about proving others wrong. It's about proving to yourself that you are more than any label or criticism. It's about claiming your right to define your own identity based on your own truth. As you do this, you'll find that the opinions of others start to matter less, while your sense of self grows stronger and more secure. This inner strength becomes the foundation for a life lived on your own terms, free from the constraints of external judgments, embracing imperfection. In a world that often glorifies perfection, embracing our imperfections can feel counterintuitive, even uncomfortable. We're conditioned to strive for flawlessness, to present ourselves as polished and unblemished. But the truth is, perfection is an illusion, a mirage that recedes as we get closer. No one is perfect, and attempting to live up to this unattainable standard only sets us up for frustration and disappointment. Embracing imperfection, on the other hand, is a powerful act of self-acceptance. It's about recognizing that our flaws and mistakes are not only inevitable, but also essential to our humanity. Imperfections are what make us real, relatable, and capable of growth. They're the cracks where light gets in, where learning happens, and where true character is built. To embrace imperfection, we must first dismantle the belief that being imperfect makes us less worthy. This belief often stems from a deep-seated fear of rejection or inadequacy, driven by societal expectations and our own harsh inner critic. But when we hold ourselves to an unrealistic standard of perfection, we deny ourselves the chance to be authentic. We become trapped in a cycle of striving, falling short, and feeling unworthy, never fully accepting ourselves as we are. The process of embracing imperfection begins with acknowledging and owning our flaws. This doesn't mean we stop trying to improve or grow. Rather, it means we accept that imperfection is a natural part of life. It's about shifting the focus from being perfect to being whole, from avoiding mistakes to learning from them. One way to start embracing imperfection is to practice self-compassion, as discussed earlier. When we're compassionate with ourselves, we're more likely to view our flaws and mistakes with understanding rather than judgment. This compassionate perspective allows us to see our imperfections not as failures, but as opportunities for growth and self-discovery. Another approach is to challenge the perfectionistic mindset. Perfectionism often leads us to set unattainably high standards, both for ourselves and for others. It can cause us to procrastinate out of fear of not being good enough or to give up entirely when we can't meet these expectations. By recognizing when perfectionism is at play, we can start to let go of the need to be flawless and focus instead on doing our best, understanding that our best is good enough. It's also important to surround ourselves with environments and people that encourage authenticity over perfection. This could mean seeking out communities where vulnerability is valued, where people share their struggles as openly as their successes. When we see others embracing their imperfections, it becomes easier to accept our own. Embracing imperfection also involves celebrating the unique qualities that make us who we are. Our quirks, our mistakes, our so-called flaws, these are the things that differentiate us from others and contribute to our individuality. They're not something to be hidden or ashamed of, but rather to be acknowledged as part of what makes us special. Finally, remember that life is a journey, not a destination. Perfection suggests a static state of flawlessness, but life is dynamic and ever-changing. We're always in the process of becoming, of evolving, and that process is inherently imperfect. Each day, each experience, each mistake contributes to the ongoing story of who we are. By embracing imperfection, we free ourselves from the impossible burden of perfectionism and open the door to a more fulfilling, authentic life. We allow ourselves to be seen, to be vulnerable, and to connect with others on a deeper level. And in doing so, we build a stronger, more resilient sense of self, one that is grounded in the reality of our human experience, with all its beauty and flaws. Living beyond labels. As we continue on the journey of self-forgiveness and identity redefinition, an essential step is learning to live beyond the labels that have been imposed on us by others, and perhaps most critically, by ourselves. Labels can be powerful. They can offer a sense of identity and belonging, but they can also be limiting, reducing the richness of who we are to a single word or phrase. When these labels are rooted in our mistakes, they can become chains, binding us to a narrow and often negative view of ourselves. Labels like failure, unworthy, or incompetent can stick to us, shaping our self-perception and influencing how others see us. Over time, these labels can start to feel like a self-fulfilling prophecy, leading us to act in ways that reinforce the very identity we're trying to escape. But the truth is, no label can fully capture the complexity of who we are. We are not our mistakes, nor are we the limited definitions others place upon us. Living beyond labels requires us to consciously reject these oversimplifications and to embrace the full spectrum of our identity. This begins with recognizing the labels we've internalized. Ask yourself, what words do I use to describe myself? Are these labels reflective of my true identity, or are they based on past mistakes, external judgments, or societal expectations? By identifying these labels, we can begin to challenge their validity and their hold on us. The next step is to actively redefine or discard these labels. For example, instead of thinking of yourself as a failure because of a past mistake, you might redefine that label to something more empowering, such as learner or resilient. These new labels reflect not only the mistake, but also the growth and strength that came from it. Alternatively, you may choose to discard labels altogether, opting instead to view yourself as a constantly evolving individual. beyond the need for simplistic definitions. Living beyond labels also involves embracing the idea that identity is fluid and multifaceted. We are not one thing, we are many things all at once. Our identity is made up of our values, experiences, relationships, dreams, and yes, even our mistakes. But no single label can capture all of this. When we accept this complexity, we give ourselves the freedom to be more than any label or past action. This shift in perspective also changes how we interact with others. When we live beyond labels, we start to see others as more than their surface identities. We recognize that everyone has a story, a history, and a depth that goes far beyond the labels society might place on them. This understanding fosters empathy, connection, and a more genuine approach to relationships. Additionally, living beyond labels requires us to let go of the need for external validation. Often, we cling to labels because they offer a sense of certainty or approval from others. But this need for validation can trap us in roles or identities that no longer serve us. By releasing this need, we open ourselves up to a more authentic way of living, one that is guided by our own values and aspirations rather than the expectations of others. Finally, to live beyond labels is to embrace the freedom to define and redefine ourselves at any point in our lives. We are not static beings. We are constantly growing, learning, and changing. This freedom is a powerful antidote to the limitations that labels impose. It allows us to step into new roles, explore different aspects of ourselves, and create a life that is aligned with our true self, rather than a life confined by past identities. In living beyond labels, we reclaim our power to shape our own narrative. We move beyond the limitations of simplistic definitions and embrace the fullness of who we are. This liberation from labels not only enriches our own lives, but also inspires others to see beyond the surface, fostering a more inclusive and compassionate world where everyone is free to be their true selves. The connection between self-forgiveness and personal growth. As we navigate the journey of self-forgiveness and redefine our identity beyond mistakes, we come to an important realization. Self-forgiveness is not just a means to heal, it is also a catalyst for personal growth. When we forgive ourselves, we unlock the potential to evolve, to transform, and to become the best version of ourselves. Personal growth often stems from our experiences, especially the difficult ones. Challenges, setbacks, and mistakes push us to our limits, forcing us to confront our weaknesses and reconsider our paths. These moments can be painful, but they are also rich with opportunity. They teach us resilience, humility, and the importance of perseverance. However, this growth is only possible when we allow ourselves to move beyond guilt and shame, when we choose to forgive ourselves. Self-forgiveness creates the emotional space necessary for growth. Without it, we remain stuck in a cycle of self-blame and regret, unable to fully engage with the present or envision a better future. By letting go of the guilt that binds us to our past mistakes, we free ourselves to focus on what we can learn from these experiences and how we can apply those lessons moving forward. This connection between self-forgiveness and personal growth can be seen in several key ways. First, self-forgiveness helps us to cultivate a growth mindset. A growth mindset is the belief that our abilities and intelligence can be developed through effort, learning, and persistence. When we forgive ourselves, we stop seeing mistakes as fixed indicators of our worth or ability and start viewing them as opportunities for improvement. This shift in perspective encourages us to take risks, to try new things, and to push beyond our comfort zones, all of which are essential for personal growth. Second, self-forgiveness fosters resilience. Resilience is the ability to bounce back from adversity, to recover quickly from setbacks, and to keep moving forward despite challenges. By forgiving ourselves, we strengthen our resilience because we are no longer weighed down by the emotional baggage of past mistakes. Instead of being held back by fear or self-doubt, we become more adaptable, more willing to embrace change, and more capable of overcoming future obstacles. Third, self-forgiveness enhances our self-awareness. The process of forgiving ourselves involves deep introspection, an honest examination of our actions, motivations, and the impact of our mistakes. This self-reflection increases our understanding of ourselves, helping us to identify patterns of behavior that may have contributed to our mistakes. With this increased self-awareness, we are better equipped to make conscious choices that align with our values and goals, leading to more intentional personal growth. Fourth, self-forgiveness improves our relationships. When we forgive ourselves, we also become more forgiving and compassionate toward others. This newfound empathy strengthens our connections with those around us, fostering healthier and more supportive relationships. As we grow in our ability to forgive ourselves, we create a positive ripple effect that extends to our interactions with others, enhancing our social and emotional well-being. Finally, self-forgiveness empowers us to set new goals and pursue our dreams with confidence. When we are no longer burdened by the weight of past mistakes, we can envision a future that is not defined by what went wrong, but by what is possible. This forward-looking mindset is essential for personal growth, as it allows us to focus on what we want to achieve and to take proactive steps toward our aspirations. In the end, self-forgiveness and personal growth are deeply intertwined. One cannot truly grow without first forgiving oneself, and through the process of self-forgiveness, we pave the way for profound personal transformation. By embracing our mistakes as part of our journey, we turn them into stepping stones toward a brighter, more fulfilled future. This is the power of self-forgiveness. It not only heals, but also propels us forward, helping us to become the person we were always meant to be. Conclusion. We've journeyed through the intricacies of self-forgiveness, explored how it reshapes our identity beyond mistakes, and uncovered its powerful connection to personal growth. Now, as we stand at the threshold of putting these insights into practice, it's clear that self-forgiveness is more than just a release from the past. It's an embrace of the future. Forgiving ourselves is not an act of weakness, it's a courageous choice to step out of the shadows of our mistakes and into the light of our potential. It's about acknowledging that we are more than the sum of our errors, that our identity is dynamic, evolving, and far too complex to be defined by a single moment or label. We've learned that by crafting a new narrative, one that honors our growth, resilience, and humanity, we take ownership of our story. Through self-compassion, we soften the harshness of guilt and shame, allowing ourselves to heal and to see our imperfections not as flaws, but as facets of our uniqueness. We've recognized the need to rise above external judgments, to reject the limiting labels imposed by others, and to live authentically according to our own values and aspirations. By embracing our imperfections, we free ourselves from the impossible pursuit of perfection and celebrate the richness of our true selves. And as we let go of the past through self-forgiveness, we unlock the door to personal growth. We cultivate resilience, nurture self-awareness, and strengthen our relationships, all while paving the way for new opportunities and a brighter future. But remember, this journey doesn't end here. The path of self-forgiveness and identity redefinition is ongoing, a continuous process of learning, growing, and evolving. Each day brings new chances to forgive, to redefine, and to step closer to the person you aspire to be. So, as we conclude, I invite you to take the first step today. Embrace your humanity. Forgive yourself for your past mistakes and start writing the next chapter of your story, a chapter filled with growth, self-compassion, and the unshakable belief that you are worthy of the life you desire. Let the wisdom of the Stoics guide you on this path, as you rise above your mistakes and live as the whole, imperfect, and evolving being you truly are.